Welcome back to another episode of Andrew's Insights. My name is Travis and I'm joined by Scott. Today we have a very exciting topic we've been getting a lot of questions about, so we'll get into that. Before we start, Scott, how you doing?
Doing good, Travis. The weather's getting hotter, but it's nice to be in AC while the summer is in full swing. But can't complain. How's your summer going?
Summer's been busy. As some of you may know, I got married a few weeks ago to my college sweetheart, Michelle. We'd been together for a while and it was time. So we had a beautiful ceremony and reception surrounded by all of our family and friends. And yeah, it was the best.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been talking about that for a while, Travis, and I'm sure it exceeded my expectations. Michelle and you look great, but yeah, it was great.
Yeah, and you actually got to enjoy the food, Scott. We didn't get to eat very much, but
I think that's the issue with weddings, or so I hear, is that the couple, you're so busy.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, we had a great time. How's your summer been?
It's been good. We've been very busy with, of course, work. But this past weekend, as some of you may know, we did the Active Senior Expo at the convention center. Travis, you look great on TV. We had a little spot there that promoted the event, and there were even a few people that came up and recognized you and Christina on TV. So that was awesome. But I guess how was that being in the limelight for a little bit on the silver screen?
It was a little nerve-wracking initially, but once we were in the interview, it felt okay, and we had a fun time on stage with Davey D and Auntie Karen. So we didn't fumble it too badly, I think. And if anyone wants to watch that interview on Island Life Live, we'll have the link on our website, and you can also go to YouTube and search up the KITV YouTube channel, and our interview will be on there in full.
Yeah, and I think that's a fun part of summer, doing these events. I know we're doing another one in about a month at the Aging in Place Expo. So it's really a good chance for us to get into the community and really hear about what's on your mind, right? What do people what are they thinking about? What are they worried about? And I think for us, Travis, what we're talking about today and they may worry about and are thinking about is what happens in the first meeting with us and what happens in a first meeting with an advisor.
Yeah, it's an exciting thing, right? And I think the reason this question comes up so often is advisors handle that first meeting differently depending on who you meet with. There's not going to be a cookie cutter template to that first meeting. So today, I think the objective of this video is to talk about what that process looks like for us and answer some questions like, what do you bring with you? What's that primary goal when you have that first meeting with an advisor? So let's kick off with that.
Yeah, I think I really do view the first meeting as getting to know each other, right? I don't want to say it's almost like a first date, but it really is, right? Just kind of making sure that you're on the same page, that personalities are a good fit, that there's a need that needs to be solved. So I think to your point, Travis, what should you bring? I think the biggest thing to bring is just what's on your mind, right? What problems can we as a financial advisor ultimately help you with? And I think, Travis, that's what I kind of appreciate about our approach is we're not thinking about a solution or a product in mind before we're meeting with you as the prospect or for the first meeting. It's really making sure that we're addressing what's top of mind for them.
Yeah, I think, people have probably experienced this before where they meet with an agent at an insurance company or they meet with a financial advisor, and 90% of the meeting is spent talking about products or talking about solutions. And what that misses, in my view, is the main point, which is you want to be building rapport with that person who will serve a very important role in your life, helping managing your finances. And so, in our view, the primary objective of that first meeting is to address your questions. What is it that was important enough for you to want to hire a professional to help you with your finances? And it's not product focused. That stuff can come later, but we can't diagnose what the right course of action would be until we have that first conversation where we uncover your primary questions and what is it that brought you in to our office for that first meeting, first date.
Yeah, so Travis, I guess what I'm hearing you say is that it's more of maybe a holistic approach versus us just trying to find a solution or find something that would be a good fit for you. I think this kind of goes back to the video that we talked about before on the best interests versus the fiduciary approach. And really think that our first meeting is one, acting as a fiduciary, right? Understanding what is in your best interest and what we could do to help you. And then also making sure that we're kind of setting aside the products or the investment solutions that we may have, right? Because you and I, we do a lot of research and we talk to a lot of fund managers. So we have confidence that we have the solutions, we have the investment products. But I think that first meeting, the one thing we don't know is what you would need as the prospect.
Yeah, Scott. So we're describing a process where they come in, where somebody comes in for the first time to talk about their most critical financial challenges. Maybe you can walk us through what the rest of that process might look like. How many meetings are involved and what happens in those meetings.
hmm Yeah, I think that's a good question, Travis. I think the first meeting is definitely getting to know each other, right? Making sure that there's trust there, that we have credibility. Establishing those two things are very important for us. And then after that trust and credibility is set, that's where sharing documents, statements, finances, cash flow, things like that is helpful. And then something that you develop, Travis, that we see from other successful advisors is creating that one page financial plan. Because I think we see the first thing that people want to do often is get organized. So creating that one page financial plan, laying out cash flow, assets, liabilities, basically everything you would expect in a financial plan. And then on top of that, after we do our analysis is also giving our recommendations, right? What would be the next steps from there? And then once those next steps are recommended, that's where we have a third meeting to really talk about, is this a relationship that we're going to go forward with, or maybe it's not a good fit, right? So for me, I don't have any expectations when it comes to those meetings. I think, Travis, the same can be said to you, right? Because ultimately we view these as relationships, not just a transactional buy and you're on your way kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, and you raise a really good point there, which is that there has to be a mutual fit between the prospective client and the advisor. Can the advisor provide the services that you're looking for, and what's the cadence of how often you're going to meet, and are you going to be meeting virtually or in person? All these things matter in deciding who you want to work with. And you mentioned the one-page financial plan. That could probably be its own video by itself because there's a lot that goes into that. We had really felt like that resonated with us to have all of our recommendations fit on one page. We want to keep it simple, right? People that know our company know that that's one of our core principles is keeping it simple, whether it's investments or the financial advice that we give. So handing somebody a book of 100 pages of recommendations hasn't worked out very well in the past. So I think keeping it on one page really drives the point home that these are our recommendations and here's how we would handle it. You had touched on documents to bring with you to that first meeting, Scott. Maybe you can briefly outline what are those documents and what should you be bringing to that first meeting?
Yep. I think that goes back to our holistic approach, right? We're not just looking at one investment account and making a recommendation on that. So, of course, investment account statements, bank accounts if it's relevant. And then on top of that, tax returns would be very helpful. That's something that we review for all of our clients and all of our prospective clients. And the reason for that is just because there's tax implications for everything we do on the investment side. And Travis, you say this often about CPAs. The one thing that they hate the most is surprises. So making sure that their taxes and their investments are aligned. We also touch on estate documents. So any trusts or wills would be helpful, life insurance policies, annuity contracts, basically anything that relates to your finances that can help us create and organize that financial picture for you.
Yeah, and it's It can be a long list of things to bring. In our experience, we've had some people that ask to send the information ahead of the first meeting. And so we'll send them a secure link to their email that they can just upload the documents so they're not having to bring a bunch of documents in. And it's also, I think we focus on what's their most pressing issue first. And so if they have one challenge that they really want to have addressed, we'll focus on that, whatever document will support the answer to that challenge. And we can kind of build off of that. So it's good to have everything that we can look at, but certainly we've had cases where we start with one core piece of the plan and then build out over the remaining, 10, 20 years that we work together to look at everything else.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, Travis, is that while we do have the recommendations after the first few meetings, we try to keep it simple, right? We know that we're not going to fix everything in 1 or 2 meetings. It's going to be a process, right? And I think that's the part we're setting the expectation with our people who meet with us for the first time is that it's going to take a few meetings, right? And I think the cadence is important. Having meetings pretty much on a weekly or every other week basis when we first start meeting is important to us, just because one, it's top of mind for you and for us, and then two, making sure that we're making good progress. So that's our expectation for when we're establishing the relationship, is that there's going to be more meetings than once you're fully established as a client for us.
Yeah. And Scott, some people that we talk to have had not great experiences with other advisors in the past. And so they're a little gun shy about coming into a meeting with somebody new for the first time. Maybe they're concerned about being sold to off the bat. Speak a little bit, if you could, on the process of, letting people decide for themselves and not pressuring them into making a decision right away before they're ready.
Yeah, that's a good point, Travis. We don't have really anyone who's not a client sign anything until they want to onboard. And all of our meetings are complimentary before we have a full on relationship with them. So I think that's the part that can give comfort, right? Like we said from the start, we want to make sure it's a good fit for both parties. That we're giving enough value to justify the fees we would charge on managing your assets. And I think that's another part that I wanted to just reiterate. We had this question a lot at the expo, right? What are your fees and how does that work? So we only charge fees on assets that we manage. So any assets that are outside of our management, we don't charge for. So I think that's where clients get a lot of value, is that we're overseeing and kind of being the quarterback on their finances, but they're getting charged on the assets that we manage.
That's a nice segue into our final point for the video today, which is when you're in that first meeting with an advisor, getting to know them and their services, what sort of questions should you be prepared to ask? And I'll start off with, just referencing that there's a list of questions that you can bring with you. We have this list published on our website as well. It's under our FAQ, questions to ask your prospective advisor. But I think the primary thing you're trying to learn is what services do they offer and does that align with what you're looking for? Not all advisors offer the same things. Some people are specialists, some people offer a more general range of services. So you want to find that alignment. Scott, you just talked about fees. So asking what the fees are is a very reasonable question, and you should be able to get a straightforward answer from the advisor that you're asking it to, and they should be transparent with not only how much you're going to be paying, but also who else besides their clients compensates the advisor. And if it's additional parties involved, then that may invite a conflict of interest. If there's other investment companies or other service providers paying the advisor, then that could be problematic. What else would you add as far as questions to be prepared to ask?
Yeah, some of the questions that I really appreciate from people who are inquiring about our firm is, do you work with people like me, right? In my shoes, right? So I know we work with a lot of pre-retirees and retirees and even younger professionals, right? So I think the main thing you want to know is, does this person, financial advisor, have familiarity with those in my situation? And then you also want to make sure, I think a big thing that is for people that is reaching out to us is transparency, right? So I think to your point, Travis, about fees, how transparent are they? And then I think another thing would be just, what is the level of service that you're going to get, like you said, Travis. So I think those are the things that are top of mind for me.
Yeah, and how often are we going to get together, right? Maybe in the beginning it's more frequent because you're building the plan, but once you've spent a year together, then how often can you expect to be invited in for a meeting? And will you need to call the advisor to schedule, or will they be proactive in reaching out to you? Those are all good practical questions to ask. And another thing is, if you're working with a solo practitioner, an advisor that's on their own, what's the plan, right? If something happens to them or if they retire, then who will you be working with next? And do they have a plan for that? If they have a team, then how does that transition look? If someone else from the team has to step up and work with the clients, so
And I think you raise a good
all
point,
good.
Travis. I think sometimes it's where maybe some advisors they're better on the sales side or the lead generation side, and then they get passed on to a service advisor or somebody else. Right. So for us as an independent firm, a smaller team, that's where for you and I know we take that relationship from start to finish, right? For the whole duration of that relationship. So for our team, even though we have other advisors, Travis, you and I work well together, but for the most part, the advisor you talk to at the start will be your advisor for the duration of that relationship.
Yeah, it's a totally valid question, right? Who am I going to be working with? And we've seen other firms and other instances where you might have someone that brings you into the fold, and then you're working with somebody else on an ongoing basis, and that may be fine if you get along with the service advisor, but you want to know that in advance. So, Scott, I think we've pretty thoroughly outlined here what that first meeting looks like, what questions you want to be prepared with. Is there anything else that you want to mention on this topic?
I think the main thing is it's not easy to meet with somebody for the first time. I know for me, whenever I go to a first meeting with somebody I don't know, there's a little bit of anxiety and anxiousness. But I think that's where hopefully our website helps, our content that we're creating, Travis helps. Both of us write a blog every week. So hopefully through our digital content like this video, you get to know our personality a little bit better. So it's not as cold of a meeting for the first time. But I think that's where finding that validation on the website, right? Reading Google reviews or asking your friends if, hey, have you heard of this advisor, right? That's the kind of things that you can do ahead of that meeting. But just know for our office, I know Travis and we want to make sure that we're pointing people in the right direction and making sure that the relationship is a great fit.
Yeah, so check out the content that we've put out, and we hear from people all the time when they meet us for the first time. They say, "Oh, it's like we already kind of know you guys because we watched your videos or we've read your blogs." So that can be a nice way to do your homework as well, is check online and watch all their stuff. So we'll wrap up for today. Thanks again for watching another episode of Andrew's Insights, and we'll be back again next week with an episode. Thanks, everyone.